Hello, welcome everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, GIS-Driven Compliance for Emergency Planning and Response, part of Connect Me Asset Mapping Events, GIS and AI for Local Government Compliance Reporting and Asset Management Series. My name is Jeremiah Lindeman. I'm with Esri, and I'll be helping moderate the event and hosting the Q&A later in the presentation today. Before we get started, we'd like to run a quick demographic poll of the audience. This will help us find out where you're from, what industries and sectors you work with, and the poll will pop up on your screen momentarily if it hasn't already. Okay, so we all like maps, so we like to think geographically, so we're definitely curious about where you're from. We're also curious about who you represent in your organization. We know that emergency management and planning and response is really an all hands on deck approach. So I'm very curious about what organizations you represent as well. So give you just a moment there to fill out those polls. Also, please fill out any additional polls as we go throughout today as well. So we'd like to have an interactive event today. So enter your questions into the Q&A space. This is located on the bottom navigation bar of your screen. There's no need to raise your hand, just post all your questions in that Q&A space. Presenters will respond to all the questions at the very end of all the presentations in a panel discussion. So all the presenters will come back and answer all the questions at once. For information about the speakers or the event agenda, click the resources tab at the bottom of your screen. We'll have some shared useful links in the resources section. So many of us have presentations we'll be going over today with kind of more information you can follow up on if you want more detail. This session is being recorded and will be available for download on demand after the event. You'll receive an email notifying you when the recording is available. We'd like to thank our webinar series sponsors, Caresoft and Bad Elf, for making the educational opportunity available for you. And Esri, we have several business partners, which Caresoft and Bad Elf both are, but we also really want to thank Samsara and CompassCom for sponsoring the session and who will be speaking with us today. So the speakers today are myself. I'm a product engineer on the Public Safety and Health Solutions team at Esri. Christine Bure-Lai, she's a strategic customer success manager with Samsara. And Brent Howard, he's the CEO and founder of CompassCom. So we'll have some great talks from both of them. So a little bit of context on why we're joining us today. We know that local governments face increasing pressure to ensure compliance with complex regulatory frameworks during emergency planning, response, and recovery efforts. Without the right tools, managing disaster risk assessments, resource allocation, and public communication can become overwhelming, leading to inefficiencies and potential non-compliance. So in today's sessions, we've all kind of working around that general framework. We'll explore how GIS can be leveraged to meet regulatory compliance requirements at the state, local, and federal levels during emergencies. You'll learn how GIS tools can support disaster risk assessment, mapping hazard zones, evacuation planning, and real-time emergency response. We'll touch a bit on how GIS can streamline reporting and post-disaster recovery efforts to ensure compliance with FEMA. So before we get started with today's presentation, let's go back to that poll result that we had you fill out. So overwhelmingly, many people from the United States today are here. That's great. Pretty diverse group of business sectors, so as we might imagine. So land use, planning administration, public safety is a good chunk. We also have public works and utilities. So like as I said, emergency management and planning and recovery, it really impacts us all. So it's great to see that all your organizations are here. And also most of you are from local governments, some from state or industry as well. So yeah, great variety of folks that are here. So again, we'll have some more polls we'll come back to, and use that Q&A anytime, and we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation today. And let me share my screen. And few PowerPoints for me to go over, and then I'll do some demonstrations as well here. Really kind of weaving in some of the topics. The general series is around AI and artificial intelligence. I'll touch on just a little bit about that. The team that I work on with solutions and how we have emergency management solutions, but really we're going to speak on one newer solution, wildfire protection planning. Before we get into that, I would like to talk about, or just open up a poll real quick and have you answer about if you are going to be using AI in any of your future endeavors. Yes, no, maybe you're not sure, and we'll touch on a little bit of that today after. So maybe your answer changes throughout today. Before we get started, we have a great partnership with IAEM, International Association of Emergency Managers. They really help promote that this month, August, is Emergency Management Awareness Month. One of the resource links has information in here, but it's a great time to really promote what emergency managers do and also just make a general awareness. So they have a lot of tools, assistance out there. So that just kind of kick off with awareness of that event. Just want to talk in general a little bit about AI, as that is kind of a general theme of this series that Connect Me is sponsoring, and talk a little bit about how ArcGIS is expanding into that area. So there's many geo AI tools and models that are being developed to help help open and extend ArcGIS. And then another area is AI assistants that are really helping improve efficiency. So really two neat areas where this is expanding. So AI assistants, you can think of that as what it says, is they are assisting you do your work. In the middle, we see something called Survey 123. You can make surveys where you can engage with other stakeholders or even the public to fill out a survey that can be map-based and capture information. There's some great new tools where you can prompt it, like what we see here, a park incident report. You can say, create a park incident report based upon what people would typically put into a park report, and it will build a survey for you, and you can extend it automatically. Several other assistants that are being developed to really help you do your work, generate code and samples for arcade, or do data exploration through, say, I want to go and find certain data, help me find this and answer my geospatial question that I'm posing. And then GeoAI is another broad tool, and some could say that GIS has been doing this for years already for doing predictive modeling and classification. But we're putting a lot of work into new foundational models that will use deep learning to do things like we're seeing in some of the pictures here for feature extraction or classifying objects. Great for imagery. I'll show a little bit of this today in one of our new solutions. So this is really making AI more approachable. Couple of things to point out on this slide for lots of things that we're doing here, but we talked about doing damage assessments, and if you're taking pictures out and capturing information, how can we do things like blur license plate or blur faces if you're capturing information in the field? But then if you have imagery, detecting damage in the field or doing other classifications for buildings or land cover can be really useful for emergency response and planning as well. So you'll see a little bit of this in action today. So that was just kind of a high-level overview, to get into the theme that Esri's putting a lot of effort into AI and where we're going. I want to talk a little bit about solutions. So this is the team that I'm on. So ArcGIS solutions are industry-specific configurations of ArcGIS. We work in really a variety of different industries. Many of you talked about some of the industries that you support. We have those listed here. I am on a sub-team that's for emergency management and health and human services. And really what ArcGIS Solutions does is we look at what are common needs, what are organizations challenged with, and how can we really bundle up our software and package it up in a solution that really meets the needs that you were trying to satisfy. So before we kind of get into some of those, I just want to pull up another poll and ask about damage assessments. And if a major disaster were to impact your community, is your organization prepared to quickly start assessing damage? And so that's a question we have because one of our solutions is damage assessments. And we find that in many cases, those damage assessments really start after the event has happened and people start scrambling how to find the process to do so. So being prepared can go a long way in just being ready once a disaster may strike. So just want to talk a little bit about the framework for this is a standard life cycle for emergency management for preparedness. You put efforts in for being prepared for when a disaster does strike. It happens. How do you respond to it? You recover from the incident, and then you're looking at what mitigation efforts can go to make things better for the future if similar incidents were to happen. Wanted to talk about this because the solutions that we have on our team really fit this framework pretty well. The one at the bottom is the one I'm going to show today is wildfire protection planning. It's a brand new solution we're pretty excited about. We also have a solution for hazard mitigation planning. So how do we keep track and manage all of our hazard mitigation plans? So where are we putting mitigation efforts into our community? And then also using data to support that workflow for where past occurrences have been. We've seen a lot of news, unfortunately, over the summer about flooding. One of our solutions has been really popular the last couple of weeks because of that is a solution called flood impact analysis. What it will do is it will take your GIS elevation data and look at where your flood prone areas are, and then map it out with your assets so you can see what assets are at risk. Anytime you have special events or mass gatherings of people like marathons or events in your parks, you always want to be prepared for any type of scenario that can happen. So we have solutions that will help you plan and respond to those events. And then some more of a your response type activities. We have a solution called Watch Center, which is about monitoring feeds in real time to make decisions. Emergency management operations is kind of our flagship solution for managing notices and evacuations, shelter status, and more. And then, as I mentioned, damage assessment is a very popular solution for if something has happened, how do I go out and start assessing residential as well as government-owned properties? We're talking about compliance. This works with FEMA. So we take all this information and it's based upon what FEMA is already asking for when they're requesting information. And then other solutions as well, such as emergency debris management. So a wide variety of solutions that we have. More than happy to speak with folks individually about any of those in detail, but I'm going to speak today about one of our newer ones called wildfire protection planning. And this really helps us enhance the wildfire protection and decision making that goes into how can we prevent this in the first place. The solution itself is really kind of for a couple people. It's for a GIS analyst to gather information to help make some plans about what can be done for mitigation efforts. And then a firefighter to take that information along with other data from the Living Atlas to plan out mitigation efforts. So with that in mind, let's just go ahead and take a look at what we get with the wildfire protection planning solution. So I'm going to hop over here to a browser and get started with the demonstration. You're speaking about compliance and how we can meet those compliance efforts. One of the main reasons why we made this solution is communities will often put a lot of effort into what are called community wildfire protection plans, or CWPPs. And I'm from Colorado. Several of us from Colorado. We can go to the Colorado State Forestry Service. We can look at community protection plans that are already made for several communities. These are usually pretty large PDFs that communities will have that's supported with data and several maps that go along with it. And it's really outlines what their planning efforts are to make their communities safer from wildfires. So that's a big context of why I'm about to show you the wildfire planning solution. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of walk through solutions. If you have not seen how to access solutions, let me just log in here real quick. I'm using my ArcGIS Online organization. I can go to this app gallery here and I can look at solutions, and I can see all of the solutions that are available to me. For instance, if I come in here to public safety, I can look at all the solutions that are under emergency management. I can take any one of these solutions. If I'm interested in flood impact, I can take a look at this solution, what it offers me of how it's going to provide me tools to do mapping and see what assets are vulnerable. And I can deploy this inside my ArcGIS Online organization and start accessing it. All these solutions are available with the software you already have with ArcGIS, so you can just deploy them. The one I'm going to show today is wildfire protection planning. So this is the one I can search for. We are really excited about this as we just released this last month. So all I have to do is click deploy now, and then I'm going to have the ability to access everything I'm about to show you. So one of the things I get when I click deploy after it's done deploying is an ArcGIS Pro project. And this ArcGIS Pro project is intended for GIS analysts to start analyzing to help make those mitigation decisions. What we do inside our Pro projects is we provide a task framework for you to start to understand what the solution gives you, preparing data. So some of the things that we do with prepare data is really tell you what you need to go out and get to be successful with the next project. We do things like go off and get imagery. The imagery is used to do things like detect buildings. So once I have some high resolution imagery, I can detect buildings that we just saw a moment ago from that imagery, and that's using the AI deep learning models that are part of this process. Another part of this data preparation is being able to go off and download data that represents a wildland urban interface, oftentimes referred as the WUI. The WUI. So you can see which structures are inside your wildlands, ember zone, or ignition zone. So a series of tasks that help you prepare data. Another task set that helps you analyze wildfire history. So I can look at an overall historical occurrence. We'll take you through steps how you can download and see historical wildfire incidents. Some of these may have been prescribed burns or wildfires. And then I can run geospatial tools to get spatially statistical significant incident cluster points. I can look at groupings of those clusters and define where those incidents are occurring on a statistical basis. And these red pockets then are areas that I might want to base future mitigation efforts, such as doing future prescribed burns. So there's a science that goes into seeing, where fires have occurred. There's oftentimes, around campsites or people, and they'll essentially hotspots for those areas, and you can plan your mitigation efforts better in the future. The next space is the next task set is a defensible space. I want to hop back over to a browser and talk a little bit more about compliance. What defensible space is, again, I'm looking at the Colorado guidelines, but many states have regulations about if you live in the wildlands, what are your regulations for, oops, come back here, I just clicked the wrong button. What regulations I have for essentially vegetation around my house. So defensible space is that area or that buffer zone that's around the house and how much tree canopy should be inside that space. So recommendations of clearing that defensible space if you're in the wildlands area. So what the Pro project has me do is I go through a set of tasks where we basically take those structures that we used from AI earlier, we buffer them, and then we use another deep learning AI model to determine the amount of tree canopy that's within those. So what we see here is kind of these yellow areas that have less trees around them, which makes sense. Just visually, we can see these yellow areas don't have as many trees, whereas the red areas have a lot more trees around that immediate 30-foot buffer of defensible space. So this provides an opportunity for agencies to potentially do door-to-door campaigns and visit with some of the folks that maybe need some assistance in or just general education about what clearing methods might be best to help ensure their home is safe. And then lastly, what we do is we can take all that together and we can share it off to the web. So we can take all these analysis of historical incidents and the clusters, the WUI data, and we can publish it out for my firefighter who's going to be in charge of determining where we're going to be placing our mitigation efforts are. So we publish this in a web browser. So my firefighter that's in charge of mitigation can start to analyze and start to plan mitigation efforts. So they can come in, they can say, well, based upon all the areas that have a lot of defensible space, that might be of concern or a lot of incident clusters, we can create a new mitigation area. I can also start to get some predefined infographics back. So if I click on that polygon I just drew as a potential mitigation area, I'm getting back a lot of demographic information about what's the age of housing, what are some of the high risk occupancies, was it a renter or mobile home units, what type of industries are in that area. So I can see the general makeup of the community for that area that I clicked on. So that's a really quick view for wildfire protection planning. I thought it fits well into theme because we are addressing AI and using some real tools in it, but also some regulatory compliance issues with CWPPs or defensible space that fit well into there. Lastly, I just want to kind of plug in another feed that's been really popular lately is we have a road closure solution where you can manage what roads have been closed. And during emergency, well, a lot of times we'll see this as just a simple list on maybe a county or city website. You can use our solution to map this out so you get a nice visual. But in addition, if you participate in this program, we have partners that we are sharing this information to. So TomTom or Apple Maps, and we're also working with other vendors as well. But what that means is if my community is participating, there's several here in Colorado, Fort Collins and Larimer County and Loveland, are all sharing their planned road closures. That might be for public works for road closure, road construction. But if I'm have an event for an emergency, I see that on my iPhone in Apple Maps, and I can see the closures automatically by sharing that information part of this program. So there's also more information. We have this link in the resources you can capture as well. So that's it for me. I think I maybe just went a minute or two over there, but a lot of information to unpack with the wildfire protection planning. So I'm going to leave now, and I'm going to turn it over to Christine, who's from Samsara, and going to talk a little bit about some of her work and share some customer stories as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremiah. Hi, everyone. I'm going to head. All right. So my name is Christine Vrelai. I'm a customer success manager at Samsara, and my team's role is to ensure that all of our customers that do use Samsara feel very well equipped to realize maximum value for their investment with our connected technology solution. So I specifically work with public sector accounts and just may reference them throughout this presentation today. So today we're going to talk a lot about how to build resilient fleets for critical moments. We'll talk about some of the common challenges that you all may face when emergencies happen, wildfires, for example, best practices and tools to overcome those challenges as well. And then throughout this presentation, if you do have any questions, feel free to add them in the Q&A section and we'll answer them in a panel altogether. So to kick us off, when it comes to emergency preparedness, state and local governments face a range of common but critical challenges, many of which can significantly impact response times and public safety. So let's walk through what a few of these are together. The first one, real-time data. So during a crisis, having up-to-the-minute insights into asset location, road conditions, vehicle status, it's not just helpful, but very essential. Many agencies are still working with fragmented systems or even outdated tools that can really delay that critical decision-making that you need. The second one is maintenance readiness. So government fleets, from emergency vehicles to snowplows, they need to be operational 24/7, especially during things like severe weather or natural disasters. But without proactive maintenance tracking, equipment features can really derail emergency response efforts right when they're needed the most. The third is safety. So whether it's ensuring your crews are operating vehicles safely in very high stress conditions or monitoring driver fatigue during long hours, public safety really hinges on visibility of what's happening in the field. And then the final challenge, event reporting. So after the disaster, the ability to quickly and accurately report on what's happening, when and where and how, it's really critical, especially for funding reimbursements, future planning, and just building that community trust. And so manual processes can really make this very slow, error prone, and resource intensive. So overall, these challenges, they don't just slow things down, but they really put lives and resources at risk. So that's why having a centralized platform that provides real-time visibility, proactive alerts, and historical insights is such a game changer for government agencies preparing for or responding to disasters. So I'm going to talk about a couple of ways that Samsara can really help, but also some other integrated systems too. So when we think about fleet preparedness, there are 3 best practices that I recommend to really ensure that your team is ready both proactively and reactively. First one is just to leverage fleet technology. So having real-time data of all of your different vehicles and all of your different equipment is really helpful, especially for situational awareness and just overall efficient decision making. So for example, with Samsara, you have the ability to create alerts to proactively monitor when specific safety events happen or something happens to a vehicle. And then you can also generate reports with live data. We also have the capability to do proximity searches and emergency response labels to help identify vehicles in a specific location or even ignore safety events when emergencies do occur. The second thing is maintaining regular maintenance. So it's really important to schedule routine vehicle inspections and servicing to prevent failures during those critical moments. Odds are, if your vehicles and equipment are ready to go, then when something does happen when you least expect it, you don't have to worry about it breaking down or just not being able to provide the service that you need. It's also really important to stock those vehicles with essential supplies. So first aid kits, emergency tools, making sure your vehicles have those items. And then within Samsara, you are able to create preventative maintenance schedules and use AI to detect fault codes. What this can do is identify the fault for your mechanics, share what the risk is to the vehicle, and then provide action items to resolve. And so what this does is help your team focus more on the task at hand, where the AI can do a lot of the analysis for you. The last one I'm going to share is just conducting disaster preparedness drills or running emergency simulations. So it's really important to train drivers on emergency protocols, safe driving techniques in hazardous conditions, and provide resources like safety manuals, evacuation routes, and risk avoidance strategies. And what this does is simulating those emergency response scenarios can test fleet readiness and then help you identify where are some of those operational gaps. Where are some of those areas in your processes where you might need to focus a little bit more on? It also allows all of your other agencies to practice communicating and collaborating with each other so that you can have a more coordinated response effort. Within Samsara, we just released a new feature called Weather Intelligence and Street Sense. So you can get public alerts from the National Weather Service and forecast weather to simulate some of those different scenarios that you might come up with, but also just get real-time visibility of what's happening on the ground. So along with some of these best practices, I want to talk a little bit more about some of those specific tools to help you meet those operational readiness needs. So I won't be able to see you, but raise your hand if you do have an emergency response plan. And then I want you to think about what are some of the items that you include in those emergency response plans. Maybe you have some, maybe you don't, but they are a great way to align your organization on steps when an event does occur. It's also the place where you can address any technology or tools used to respond to emergencies and disasters. So within those plans, we highly recommend assigning those clear roles, establishing those protocols, and then listing down how is collaboration not only with your organization, but with other local agencies. What is it going to look like? What is it going to sound like? Having and communicating those protocols with clear guidance and coordination can really help ease when a an event does occur, and also just help note down some of those expectations. One thing I do highly recommend is creating a memorandum of understanding to allow for sharing of telematics and location data. Sometimes that's always like the last thing on the list, but it's really important to make that clear so that when you are sharing out that data or submitting kind of like an after actions report, it's very clear where that data is coming from and why you have it in the first place. So I want to share an example. Monroe County, they manage a lot of critical infrastructure in the south of the US around the Keys, and they're frequently impacted by hurricanes and storms. And so maintaining operational readiness for about 60 plus of their emergency power generators and fleet vehicles, it was very critical for them to maintain that public safety. So in the past, they've struggled a lot with manual tracking, delayed FEMA reporting, and then slow emergency response. So as a solution, Monroe County implemented Samsara asset gateways and vehicle gateways. And what it did, it helped enable real-time asset tracking, automated maintenance alerts for them, and then helped them create custom reports to streamline those FEMA data requirements. And then they were able to weave that into their emergency response plans. So as a result, they actually improved emergency response times by about 50%. Because the county was able to quickly locate and dispatch crews to restore essential equipment after a storm. They also reduced time spent to maintaining generators by 25%. This helped increase efficiency, keeping generators operational, powered fire stations, and other critical facilities. And then lastly, as I mentioned, they just were able to get faster, more accurate FEMA reimbursement. So the Samsara reports help provide a clear audit trail of crew activity during emergencies, speeding up a lot of those claims processes. So this value of one, having emergency response plans, but also integrating it with the technology that they have, ensured assets and crews were ready whenever a storm happened, enabled real-time decision and resource deployment, but then also just created a more trustworthy compliance and reimbursement workflow for disaster response. So let's talk about some of the connected tools for emergency response with Samsara. As Jeremiah mentioned, Esri is a really, really great tool, and you can actually integrate it with Samsara data to get you out of the box insights. So when a disaster strikes, time is super critical. And so having Samsara data automatically feed into Esri gives agencies that real-time visibility of fleet and equipment locations without needing to build a custom integration. You don't have to be super techy to make this integration work. And so this really helps quickly mobilize resources, monitor response activity, and then also identify gaps on a live map. Another great tool that's really helpful to make sure everything stays connected is a simple mobile app. And so at Samsara, we have both a fleet app for your back office staff and then a driver app for your drivers. And so fleet crews can use the mobile app to tag specific disasters or incidents when they're responding to them. And this helps kind of simplify that coordination across teams and then ensure that reporting after the fact, especially for FEMA reimbursements, for example, or post-incident reviews, it's very accurate and well documented. An app marketplace. So at Samsara, as I mentioned, Esri is just one of the amazing technology that we integrate with. And so what this does is we provide access to pre-built integrations with other systems like Power BI or signal preemption tools that will let your agency quickly extend your capability, whether it is improving situational awareness or just giving emergency vehicles the green light to go and act on an incident. And then lastly, OpenAI. So we have an OpenAI platform which allows you to integrate our data into a bunch of other data that you may, or a bunch of other systems that you may already have. And so for us, flexibility is super key. And our OpenAI just allows you to connect real-time data to any platform that you use for emergency operations, whether it's the state EOC dashboard, a local GIS tool, custom emergency response system. All of these different tools that we have available just allow you to make everything connect with each other, talk to each other. So when something does happen, it's very clear of what is going on and when it's happening and who's communicating that information. The last tool I want to share is Samsara's VG55 Vehicle Gateway, which is now FirstNet trusted, which means it's certified for use on the FirstNet network. So FirstNet was built with AT&T, and it's the only nationwide wireless broadband communications platform built for America's first responders and those who support them. And what it does is that it provides prioritized, highly secure connectivity to first responders. So it allows them to communicate effectively without interfering with commercial traffic or network latency due to congestion. So think of when emergency does happen and there's just a bunch of police vehicles and other vehicles all in one space. FirstNet kind of just helps reroute so the first responders can get first dibs on the connectivity. And so with Samsara's GPS tracking, remote diagnostics, and more, this VG55 will allow you to help optimize some of those routes, get great fuel and energy use data, vehicle maintenance data, compliance data, and then overall driver management. So State Fish and Wildlife Enforcement Agency, they're a state-level public agency responsible for enforcing laws and responding to emergencies in remote, rural, and coastal areas. And so the agency's officers and vessels, they often operate where standard network coverage is really unreliable. And so this challenge is even more amplified during emergencies like natural disasters or search and rescue missions. And so what the State Fish and Wildlife Law Enforcement Agency did is leverage FirstNet's capabilities with Samsara to ensure that they get that reliable connection to its fleet. And so overall, they saw 4 key benefits. One, that enhanced connectivity. So they're able to get that mission critical data and communications, and it's prioritized over commercial traffic, even during disasters. They had overall improved situational awareness. So Samsara's real-time vehicle tracking and asset tracking, it really helped allow command centers to see the exact location of personnel, which is super critical for dispatching resources. Increased safety. So this combination helps officers stay connected with their command centers and other agencies and making sure, their drivers are being safe and they're able to handle the missions in hard to reach locations. And then lastly, that interagency collaboration. So with FirstNet, the agency can communicate seamlessly with other law enforcement and the public safety organizations during those large scale events overall. So super, super great tool, and it is available now with Samsara. And so I want to end with one more case study of City of Fort Lauderdale and just talk about how do all of these different tools and best practices all come to play together. So City of Fort Lauderdale, they manage over 1,700 vehicles across multiple departments, including public works, fire, police, emergency response. And so before Samsara, the city really relied on manual communications to dispatch vehicles and had limited real-time visibility, especially during hurricanes. We all know Florida hurricanes, they happen quite often. So Fort Lauderdale implemented Samsara's vehicle gateways and environmental monitors for that live vehicle location, engine diagnostics, and overall environmental monitoring. And so they use Esri ArcGIS, and the city integrates their real-time data into their citywide GIS board. So that's how those two kind of talk to each other. And so what this did is it allowed city officials to visualize all of their vehicles in one view on their Esri maps. So they're able to see snowplows, fire trucks, utility vehicles. They were able to monitor and coordinate fleet location and status during those storms or disaster recovery events. And then they were also able to set up geofences in Esri for a rapid response. So they could mark areas where it was flooding or a no-go zone or even just debris locations. And so during the storms, the fleet team used both SAMSAR and Esri to track cleanup vehicles in real time as they cleared debris blocked roads. They confirmed priority routes that are open and were able to rapidly dispatch crews to those areas, to those troubled spots. And then they were able to share live fleet status emergency. They were able to share live fleet statuses and updates with emergency management and public works using their Esri mapping tools. So a lot of great partnership with these two systems. And so overall, City of Fort Lauderdale, they saw a 28% reduction in vehicle downtime through those better preventive maintenance and diagnostics. They had a faster, more coordinated storm cleanup with real-time visibility and geospatial data fusion. And then overall, just the citizens had better communications. The city was able to verify and respond to resident requests a lot more quicker and with more precise data with both of these systems working together. So those are just a few ways that you can build resilient fleets for critical moments, leveraging technology, keeping an eye on maintenance and running some of those simulations. So hopefully this was really, really helpful, and I appreciate you all for your time. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A and we'll respond to them at the end. So now I would like to introduce Brant Howard for CompassCast.
My name is Brant Howard. I'm the founder and CEO of CompassCom Software, and also the founder of the Compass family of companies in the geospatial business for over the last 30 years. My focus today and my main duties is running the day-to-day and the development and the vision for CompassCom. And as a 30-year Esri partner, we have developed our solutions across the Esri platform for many years. And we originally started in the business with public safety back in the 90s in the day. What I want to talk about today, Christine covered what are capabilities available in tracking vehicles today, and several of us that do those kind of solutions in the industry, and Samsara is obviously a leader in that field as well. I'd like to talk about compliance and connectivity as it relates to emergency management, emergency response, and special events that are occurring more and more today. Compliance is imperative when it comes to your activities as first responders and emergency management professionals. There are standards, federal, state, and also Homeland Security standards that you design your plans to meet and ensure that you are providing best practices in the case of when these emergencies happen. And then you go through the core process of preparedness, which is plan, running exercises, making sure you have secure IT that's resilient through the process. Then through the response phase, it's primary search and rescue. Our client in Boone, North Carolina, Chief Jimmy Isaac, we have a video on the link if you'd like to see his lessons learned from Helene. He did over 220 search and rescues in a day at the peak of Helene. Then you have recovery, where you look at live data that was stored and you can replay and go back and cover the areas that may have been missed, or then record your activities with overtime and things that can be used for future reporting, whether it's for FEMA or other grant processes. When you get to the mitigation, you have your plan, and the plan may be modified based on the event. And then you want to be able to track and to look at GIS and mobile assets in real time, and then also in analytics to see, are we meeting that plan? Data is the core asset. Real-time GIS and location are key to any of these incidents. Data retention and sharing. How is the data shared? It's not just stovepipe applications. The data that's being generated through the GIS system, through the real-time system, from 911 to computer-aided dispatch. This is a real challenge, is getting all these to play together. And then having secure and interoperable systems, interoperability with GIS, being able to bring in multiple sources of GIS, whether it's weather, traffic, the basic map layers that are used for evacuation plans, and updating those in real time are very important. Interoperable systems for voice and data communications, they're very important. We're going to talk about that. And then continuous readiness, support for emergency management for digital twins. This GIS environment screams out the use of digital twins. You have a plan, you have an incident, did you meet or measure against that plan? And then you update the plan with the digital twin. It's a very powerful process to be able to use to measure and to change going forward. As the people in special forces and the Navy SEALs say, the tactical plan is great until the first shot is fired. Then it comes to training and your operational background on how your mission is going to succeed. That is covered here as well. We're going to do a poll now, and like if you could put up the poll, and we're going to talk about wireless communications that you use in your work and your response to events. And how are your IT and GIS and communication systems deployed? Very important what we're going to talk about going forward. And what are most important features your agency IT system and data, accessibility, interoperability, security. I look forward to we'll look at those answers here in a few minutes. So the role of real-time GIS is the ability to bring in weather warnings in the case of using ArcGIS Online data that's available in the community, or going to other standard weather, but National Weather Service, DTN. There's several of those weather services out there. If you have an open platform, you can bring in MDSS for planning for weather forecasting for snow and snow fighting. The ability to have those and then understand the warnings, whether it's a tornado, flood, or hurricane in real time, is very important. Live status of incidents that are going on from 911 or what other source of information you get there, plus shelters. Where are the shelters? How are they filling up? Fuel supplies, where the citizens get fuel, or your first responders, and then utilities, water, electric utilities. What are the status of those in real time? And then monitoring evacuation route and traffic around those evacuation routes, so you can maybe reroute traffic to make them more efficient. These are all things that are part of that real-time GIS. Operational coordination, pre-staging resources across agencies. Florida has become a master at this when a storm's coming in. They pre-stage resources for recovery. 911 call monitoring prioritization. When the 911 calls come in, how do you determine which ones you're going to respond to when you get overwhelmed? What are going to be priorities and how it's handled in real time? Real-time tracking. Christine talked about this. Whether you're doing vehicles, individual staffs carrying radios, cell phones, aircraft, drones, marine equipment, and in wildland fire, the heavy equipment that gets checked in on site and is used for firefighting or recovery in natural disasters. Being able to provide tracking for them on multiple broadband and or mobile radio in one common operational picture is key in real time. Then there's stand down thresholds for hurricanes, especially. When the weather gets sustained winds 40 to 50 miles an hour, they don't go out. 911 calls, if wireline communications available, will be coming in, but then they have to queue those. So when the sustained winds go down, then they can determine where they're going to go. Search and rescue priorities based on when they can be out and what they can do. Inventory and coverage mapping. Is the damage? How are we going to get out and reach it? All of this is very important, and in GIS is a massive tool in making this happen. And then you need to think about when this is going on or when you have communications, how are you going to share it with the public and the stakeholders? Share data with partners and the public, and probably the biggest one you need to be concerned about is sharing with the media. how and when. You have public relations officers that handle that, but how are we going to present what's going on and how we are doing that? We have a product called Compass AVL that's a public facing viewer that can be configured. Esri has GeoEvent and or Velocity or other solutions that are available. A lot of times you're trying to provide information, but the right information to the public. You delay sometimes what you put out there. You want to have safety for the first responders and not give the real-time position. You may black out some of the areas where there are resources that are inactive. You don't want to show inactive resources to the public. We have ways of doing that and presenting the picture you want. And we're getting to the point now where it's just not a paper map on the wall with a camera on it. So let's use this technology to share better with the public and the media. Do we have any of the results of the poll coming in now that we can share? So as we can see, broadband cellular, land mobile radio, and satellite comm is being used more. And then WAN and local wireless is with Wi-Fi is used as well. So it looks like everybody is leveraging multiple sources of comm, which is great because they always aren't available. And you want to be able to tie them together. If we look at how things are being deployed, on-prem is still a major part of the solution because cloud and internet connectivity isn't always available. We're going to talk about that. And the ability to have a hybrid solution, I think, is really important, where you can leverage when the cloud's available and when it's not. And then it comes down to what's important, ease of access, and then also security. And we're going to talk about that as well. So it's good to see that that's a priority for the people that are in attendance. So when we talk about the connectivity challenge, maintaining a secure operable system for IT, GIS, and communication is key to responding to these incidents or just everyday operation. Having redundant on-premise systems, as we saw in the poll, or hybrid systems to back up cloud operations. You know, if you look at the Esri structure, and we're going to share our structure as well, they have the ability for operating disconnected and connected, and the ability to sync as they go back and forth between that. And I think that's very important to be able to function both connected and disconnected. A lot of the inventory that happens in hurricanes, Survey 123 is used. It's used disconnected in the field. It's used when it connects back to the cloud when it gets connected or on-premise and updates the data. Infrastructure failure scenario. Typically power is the first to go down. And then you have to have a plan for generators or maybe solar to fill the gaps until power is brought back online. Wireline internet 911 service goes down. We're seeing, especially with Helene recently, more Starlink being used fixed and mobile to fill the gaps and having those systems available to leverage. Broadband cellular is down, P25 land mobile radio and cellular on wheel sites need to be brought in. And the P25 network is usually the first system to recover because that's the public safety network with land mobile radio that's used. When we all know when there's an event, broadband has a curtain that's shared between voice and data. Christine talked about FirstNet that helps prioritize some of that curtain, but still voice tends to eat up the data portion of transmission. Some agencies do not want to depend specifically on cellular and use our client Illinois DOT uses LMR across the whole state for their DOT because it's critical infrastructure. They use some cellular, but they want to be able to use the land mobile radio because it is the most resilient system for wireless communication in their case. And also in Florida, and it happened in one of the counties in Ian during this storm down in southeast Florida. As the storm came through, broadband went down. They had one of 6 sites go down on the LMR system. It was back up and running within 12 hours, and they all depend on that system. So it's important to have a combination of communications to keep connectivity. Self-contained point-to-point radio systems are used also. Having tactical systems, when not all the systems down, be able to do push-to-talk on conventional systems between first responders until the main systems are up and running or report. If you go see the information Jimmy Isaac shared, they were down for several days, and the only communication they had was point-to-point from the Motorola radio to radio. Multipath communications, wireline, broadband, satellite, and LMR. You need a strategy to do that. Our approach has always been to take multiple types of assets, whether it's broadband, Motorola radios, BK radios, both in vehicle and handheld, smartphones through TAC, things like generators, things like compressors, key heavy equipment assets, being able to track those on multiple communication networks and store them in a common server that can be on-prem or in the cloud, and then share it out in an Esri environment, and then have the APIs enable it to be shared to emergency management CAD or other solutions. One of the big things you'll see here is we're doing more and more with TAC server. And TAC server is an interface with smartphones on a broadband network that are being used and deployed in fire and federal response teams and in state and local teams. We're the only company today that offers a TAC interface and an interface that will track land mobile radio and TAC on the same common operational picture. And that is what have been deployed at Special Forces for us. And it's a really a growing area. There were some real breakdowns in Butler on the presidential campaign. There were multiple comms being used on the site that were integrated. TAC was being used, land mobile radio, broadband. We got to get better at this. And one way to do it, they're looking to use TAC to do that. In our world, we deploy in three ways. Our Compass Track Enterprise, and this pretty much matches up with a lot of the Esri technology that we leverage, is an on-premise solution. This on-premise solution could be a hybrid solution. It can also be hardened and behind the firewall. We have authority to operate with the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Army, the Department of Energy, and we deploy these systems where they're hardened, locked down with an Esri map source on site with mapping data on site. Very important, and you'd be surprised, utilities, petroleum refineries, and Department of Transportations with critical infrastructure want to be on-prem and secure. Our Compass Works is a SaaS-based product primarily used by critical infrastructure for public works and government. This grew dramatically with COVID because people wanted to be able to do updates in the cloud versus having to come on-prem in a lockdown situation. So this is growing as well. Our Compass Respond product is a tactical mobile system. And when we talk about using land mobile radio point to point, you can move these systems around. This is what Jimmy Isaac and Boone uses. We have several of our defense clients that use it, and also the Mexican military use it for border patrol on the southern border. The ability to bring your own communications with an Esri-based map, this is built on Esri runtime, and be able to even backhaul with Starlink back to headquarters and a mobile application. So you have on-prem, secure cloud through Azure, and also the ability to deploy with mobile tactical systems as well. So training and simulation. Practice operation with limited or no connectivity. When you run your scenarios, do you assume you're not going to have wireless connectivity for voice data or the internet? And simulate those and be able to come up with plans that augment that. Plan for threats. Our bad actors want to kick us while we're down. We've got to be ready when we have an issue, even day to day or during a threat from a cybersecurity perspective, to be able to handle those threats. Confirm system integrated with partner agencies. This is the biggest challenge. The feds come in with FEMA. or other agencies, state and local, and how do they all communicate together, and having interfaces in between these voice data and IT systems that help do that. Constant challenge. We're working on it to try to open that up, but it's one we have to work on. Test voice and data lakes across platforms, very important. And having fail over and redundancies. So when one does fail, you have a plan. If the cloud system fails, you can go on-prem and still work. And the GIS from Esri and our capability helps you do that. New technology that's a game changers we see is having these interoperable interfaces for LMR, broadband, and SATCOM. Are enabling agencies to work together and cooperate and share data. Public-facing websites for citizen engagement, very important to share the message you want to share to help during response and recovery and mitigation as well. And be able to do it with the media is very important. Video, we're incorporating more and more video into our product every day. And it's whether it's dash cams or body cams or even commercial video that's available in areas that we can now leverage, we're using. Drones are a blessing and a curse. Unauthorized drones finding an emergency area is a problem, and there's a lot of scenarios where they're trying to deal with that, but also having drones to do assessment during response and recovery is important. Mobile mapping of damaged assessments. Our Compass Data company has done, and you can see the Trimble unit there, it's being used to go in immediately after and document and record the damage. We don't do the things that some people are using as a survey 1, 2, 3 to go door to door, but to get an overview of utilities, infrastructure, and damage. We've done this in Ian, Milton, Helene. We now have a 3-year project to do Puerto Rico and the mitigation after the Maria disaster down there a few years ago. They have $69 million to go through mitigation and plan for the next event so they're ready for it. New satellite resources. We're getting new communication systems every day coming up available, like Starlink. They're going to be more. And there are new imagery capabilities coming out. There's an imagery company that's just starting up that are putting up satellites that are going to be able to measure or identify hot spots in the start of a wildfire and do alerts. So there's more resources coming there. And as Jeremiah said, AI for everything. Whether you're doing simulation training, enhancing data evaluation. Esri did some amazing things on damage assessment in the LA fires. And if you haven't seen that presentation, it's probably available online, I think, Jeremiah. But what used to take days and weeks, they were able to do in hours with AI. And then decision recommendations. We do not have a philosophy at CompassCom that AI is going to make decisions for first responders. What we want AI to do is make recommendations so the authoritative commanders or people on the ground make the decisions. It's just not safe to make those decisions. It's great that AI will make the recommendations to give us more options to choose from. And then TAC, the tactical awareness kits and the interface to TAC server is growing every day. And how do we take first responders with smartphones, combine them with land mobile radio and other comm systems, and put them in one common operational picture is going to be a game changer out there. The bottom line, connectivity is not negotiable. IT, GIS, voice, wireless data needs to be resilient and needs to have backup for all the systems. Compliance depends on sustainable retention and availability of data. Who owns the data? Where's the data? Do you have access for it for mitigation and planning, and even a digital twin type environment moving forward, and having redundancy and backup of that data? History of location to stakeholders and the equipment and what they did is key to determining on if you were compliant with your plan. GIS drives every phase: weather, traffic, scenarios, tracking. We talked about tracking vehicles, staff, assets, heavy equipment, generators, resources. Very important, not only to track it in real time, but know where it was to measure it against compliance. Natural disasters have no boundaries. Christine talked about Fort Lauderdale. I talked about Western North Carolina. We do a lot in the wildfire area where there is no cellular and they depend on mobile, land mobile radio. You have to have the ability to operate in all of these environments. They're across state lines, tribal boundaries. And a lot of our first responders in the task force side of their group will do international support. Or I know West Metro Fire from Denver went down to Texas recently, and they have to be mobile and be able to go and communicate. With the change coming or projected coming of FEMA, and we don't know what FEMA's role is going to be in the future with this administration, but there's talk about leaning more on the National Guard, and the National Guard right now is out looking at options on how they can perform more, not only what they do in their state, but when they get deployed to other areas. They're also going to have to pick up the administrative functions that FEMA would do if this change happens, and they're going to depend more on GIS and more on communications. So connectivity is very important. I appreciate your time in joining us today. Please, I look forward to your questions when we do the Q&A, and I thank you. And if you have any questions, reach out to us at CompassCom, and we'd be happy to work with you and your other stakeholders to try to get connectivity and response where it needs to be to save lives and improve efficiency. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, both Brant and Christine. Just to remind everyone, if you have questions about anything you saw today or even anything that might be a little bit off subject you want to talk to anyone about, feel free to use the Q&A below. We do have a question. We can throw the first one out to you, Christine. Richard asks, would this Samsara FirstNet be available to jurisdictions' public works teams as well as during disasters?
Yeah. So FirstNet, it does need to be approved by AT&T. And so it's available for primary users and then extended primary users. So what that means, primary users, they're public safety entities like first responders, fire protection services, emergency 911, call dispatching, government public safety answering points, emergency planning and management offices, and then ambulance safety services. And then for extended primary users, those are agencies and organizations or nonprofits that provide public safety services in support of those primary users. So they could be like public sector agencies, utilities, healthcare, transportation. They just provide a lot of like mitigation, remediation, overhaul, cleanup, restoration. So it kind of just depends. Again, we go through a approval process with AT&T if to see if you're FirstNet eligible if you're interested.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for maybe both of you. Given that there's a wide variety of audience, and you might have some emergency managers that are just kind of getting a lay of land within their whole organization. Talked about fleets and different organizations. What, obviously, like the snowplows come to mind, but what other types of vehicles have you seen that are being used that maybe you just want to share for just general organizational awareness?
In the wildland fire, you have a variety of different assets and anything from pickup trucks, but the heavy equipment contractors usually check in on site, and they have to check their contractors for the Forest Service and all that are stood up based on what happens, and they come on site and they have to check them into the site and check them out of the site. And being able to track those assets in a temporary basis when they come on and off is important. But in addition to that, you have their standard pickup trucks and standard four-wheelers and things like that they use to get around. The teams that get dropped in by air typically carry either a BK or a Motorola radio, and the ability to track those on the radio network is key because even in LA, when the cellular system went down, until they got it back up again, they did have radios. And when they're out in areas like BLM land or Forest Service land where it may not be cellular, those radios are how they coordinate together.
Great, thank you. Add on to that is another question for Christine. You were talking about like emergency simulations, and this is something that always it's kind of hard to do when you're always just so busy. Can you explain a little bit more what that means? Like, how does that get rolled out? Especially for like the fleet readiness you were talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, it can vary from organization to organization, but specifically with like your emergency responders, even firefighter crews, EMS services, there are opportunities where you can just kind of simulate where if say a natural disaster happens in one area of a city, you can simulate what it may look like if vehicles were to just automatically dispatch into that location. How much time is it going to take? Who's going to be involved? Who are you communicating with? And like specifically for Samsara, for example, we do have something called proximity search. So you could pick an area and just automatically dispatch and then see how long it takes vehicles from where they are right now to get there. So just different scenarios, just depending on what types of disasters happen in your area, could really help you figure out, okay, what's the timing? Who needs to be involved? What types of communications? What are some protocols we need to have just in case something does like this does happen? And then I think in the back end too, it's figuring out how are we maintaining these vehicles and making sure that if something does happen all of a sudden, they're ready to go and not going to have like a scheduled maintenance.
Cool. That's great. Thanks. You have another question? It's about all of us could maybe take a stab at this, but Mark asks, which emerging GIS capabilities such as AI integration, real-time sensor data, or drone imagery do you see having the biggest impact on enterprise asset management in the next 3 to 5 years? Brant, any thoughts? You want to start with?
Well, I think it comes back to that, as Mark's suggesting, AI in the GIS environment. And I think your LA fire example of just damage assessment and what you were able to do and cut the amount of time. And that in itself helps determine when the limited first responded resources are overwhelmed, where are they going to start and where are they going to go? And those recommendations that are going to be taking the GIS data, the call data coming in from 911, and be able to take all of that and look at it quickly and make recommendations, I think is really going to be a game changer. And I think you saw it, Jeremiah, in LA, and what you guys were able to do there. That was a gigantic leap forward versus what was done in the past.
Right. Yeah, Mark mentions the real-time sensor and drone. I mean, but both of those are tied to AI. I mean, like AI is going to be used to make decisions or detect things right away, and both of those are moving quite a bit. Seeing a lot, especially within drones themselves being first responders to incidents. So it's interesting how that will all evolve. Christine, anything more?
I think the biggest thing too is just how they're all working together. I mean, I can see, yes, one might have the larger for the other, but honestly, I think them having AI integrated with your sensor data, or having AI integrated with your drone imagery, I think is going to even have a much larger impact.
Yeah, and there are situations, even the Denver metro area right now, where they pre-stage drones out on rooftops, and they can fly them remotely and put them over a crime scene. They didn't have to drive the drone up there to do it. The city of Aurora, Highlands Ranch, they have these drones and as you said, Jeremiah, drone as first responders. They have them now staged out in different locations, and they go in remotely and fly them. It's almost like they do out of Nellis to fly UAVs over the Middle East. It's being done in our neighborhoods now with drones. That is definitely be a game changer. And the ability to track those drones with ADS-B and then see other drones that shouldn't be there. I know a Compass Data does drone pilot testing, and our trainers a lot of times are flight for life pilots that when they're not flying, they do trainings for us. And that incident we had that a couple of years ago of the active shooter in the school. One of our pilots that was flying for Flight for Life had to abort a landing because there was a drone flying in the area from media that shouldn't have been there. And so that's the things that hopefully, like you say, Jeremy, monitoring all this stuff in real time, we can prevent that, have no-fly zones, get the data out quicker so people don't show up with drones.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really important.
Yeah, it's an important point you were making earlier about how they can be a problem too. One more problem, no, one more question, I'm sorry. Jeff asks, change detection, AI, and drones are only good if you have recent imagery. What would you propose to municipality to get their buy-in on getting the minimum yearly aerials? That's a good question too. I think the thing that just comes off the top of my head is there's a lot of regional consortiums. Like in Colorado, there's something called DRCOG, the Denver Regional Consortium of Governments. And basically, a lot of the local municipalities go together to basically acquire that imagery on a regular, yearly, or bi-yearly basis. So I'd say, look at the community and see if there's, partnerships that can be done there to help acquire that. But otherwise, I think there's other benefits, looking inside the organization. There's so many people that are finding the value in imagery. Your public works department might want it, your parks department might want it. So just within your own organization, there might be needs there of like people wanting to have that imagery to come together. So Brant, Christine, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, on the Compass Data side, we do a lot of work with imagery. And we do ground control for many of the major imagery providers. There are services out there, and I'll call out Eagleview because Eagleview has a service. They do a lot of work with the county assessors, and they're down now producing, 3-inch imagery, and they're examples. And this is award-winning product. I mean, we do work for a lot of different imagery companies, but Eagleview has probably the most accurate and some of the most current data. There's Planet Labs that does real time that's available for satellite. There's more coming, by the way. But to answer Jeff's question, Hexagon has imagery. There are different groups. Bexel has imagery. If you look at those different and your area of interest where you live and what you want, you can have that data. There's blue sky and gray sky flights. Blue sky they fly them consistently. The U.S. government flies things, but the gray sky is what FEMA and Department of Homeland Security, they fly right after a disaster, and so sometimes that gray sky imagery may not be as real world accurate, but it's relatively accurate, and they will make that available not immediately, but it's pretty quick on some of that gray sky stuff. And maybe Esri posts that through our GIS Online. I don't know, Jeremiah.
Yeah, there's a lot of providers out there for what's out there on ArcGIS Online, but as well as other resources too that provide imagery. So maybe another discussion. Cool. Well, I think we're wrapping up. The questions have started to filter out, but again, a lot of us shared contact information. Happy to follow up anytime. Really want to thank Brant from CompassCom and Christine from Samsara, as well as Karasov and Bad Alf for putting this together and Connect Me for really organizing all of this. So thank you for all of your time, and we'll go ahead and wrap up the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.